Nowadays, there are so many Chinese spend a lot of time on stocks and fund. They try to invest. You are being so successful as financial investors. So what do you suggest them to do?
If they are successful, they should continue, and if they lose money, they should stop. It's interesting, but some studies show that there are many people who continue gambling in the stock market even though they always lose money. If investing becomes a gambling habit, they should stop it. That's not very good. If you really stuck in a particular line, you should be ready to switch. And when I was a young man, I had several false starts in life. And when I got very frustrated, I made a big change. And eventually, I found the way to get ahead. So when I succeeded, kept on going. If I failed, then I changed course. But to test your ideas against reality is a very good thing.
Right. Well, the young people encounter a lot of challenges. They have a lot of thinking, they have a lot of dreams in their mind, and they want to be successful. Everyone would like to try the best. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's any short way to be successful?
Some people are successful sooner than others. I can only speak from personal experience. When I was young, I was thinking very hard, and I had a lot of passion and interest in wanting to achieve great things. And I couldn't translate that into practice. And that was very frustrating. And it took me a very long time, actually, to succeed. But now that I'm really now an old man, I'm nearly 80 years old, I have actually just more or less recently fulfilled the dreams that I had when I was an adolescent. And that is a source of great satisfaction to me. But it took a very long time to achieve it. The problem I had as a young man is that I didn't connect with the world. I didn't have entry into the world. The world almost was like a closed door, and I was knocking on the door, but I didn't find the key to open it. And that, finding the key, that is what takes a lot of time. And of course, the more experienced you become, the more easy it becomes to open other doors.
Right. Now, when facing this kind of uncertainty, as you said, it's critical to find the right key in order to open the door. But the problem is where you're going to find the key. This is a lot of uncertainty facing. So what can you suggest to Chinese young people when they are making their prediction for their life, for their, for example, job, opportunities, the business is doing, their life changes?
There isn't a single way. You see, different people have different abilities, different interests. There was an ancient Greek philosopher who said, know yourself. And that's very good advice. It's not enough to understand the world. You also have to understand yourself. And that's the way forward.
Well, recently in China, Chinese publish your recent lectures in Budapest.
Yes. Basically, I sum up my view of the world. And of course, I particularly talk about the financial markets because that's where I have the most experience. And the main point is that our understanding of the world in which we live is inherently imperfect, because the people who actually are participating in the world change the world by their thinking, and that is what creates the uncertainty that you have to cope with. It's like a game that you play, the rules of which are to some extent changed by the way you play the game. So it's a very complicated game.
Many people call you an investor's profit strategist. Mm-hmm. You are able to make very well ahead of time projections. How are you able to do that?
Well, you know, my prediction of the future is not usually accurate, but I do try to anticipate, and I'm also ready to correct my expectations when reality doesn't fulfill my expectations. So I think it's important to realize that our understanding of reality is always imperfect and inadequate. It can be improved, but it can never be perfect. So that way you don't lose your way. You try to find your way because you are trying to anticipate the future, but you know that if you get in the wrong direction, you then have to change a course. So you have to be always critical of your own beliefs, and at the same time you must have some belief.
And then we know, reading your books, your biographies, and actually you're applying your philosophies, your philosophical thinking and beliefs that help you making good fortunes in the financial market. Can you suggest Chinese young people, when they study the philosophy?
I find that young people in China are more interested in philosophy than, for instance, people in America. And I'm very pleased about that, because I am very interested in philosophy and in understanding how the world works. And I find a lot more interest and similarity in that approach in China than actually in America. People in America are very, very practical, and they don't like abstract thought. Right. And yet, abstract ideas have a very big influence on the world, and so it's important to understand them.
What do you think Chinese young people, what do you find their characteristic from other part?
Even if they don't study philosophy, people in China generally have a very high regard for philosophy and high regard for people who actually think about those things. And I like that attitude. And I've recently given a series of lectures where I explained my philosophy, and which is now published in Chinese, and I'm very happy about that. And I hope actually that instead of reading about me and trying to figure out how I make money in the stock market, they would pay more attention to my philosophy. Philosophy by itself will not get you very far. So you have to also engage in something practical. But philosophy is something that is, I think, has to be your view of the world, which you have to establish for yourself. I'm not a philosopher, but I have done a lot of thinking. And that's what I consider philosophy. trying to understand the world in which you live. I think in many ways Chinese students are very well situated because they are not sort of brought up with the prevailing theories in the West. So they have a more open mind. And actually, I find that they can understand or relate to my interpretation of financial markets better than, say, students who have been learning economics in American universities. In the last 25 years, both economics as a theory and financial markets as in practice, in reality, have developed in the wrong direction, which have led to the financial crisis that the world has just suffered through. And then economic theory went into a world of its own because they tried to eliminate uncertainty and have a firm prediction of the future, similar to how you can predict the movement of the stars. So they tried to imitate the kind of predictions that, let's say, physics can give you. And that was a false track. They wanted to reduce everything to mathematical certainty. And there are uncertainties that can't be quantified. So they became very good in mathematical calculations, but they forgot about reality.
Right.
So in that respect, I think the Chinese financial system is behind the Western in its development. But because it's behind, it's actually ahead, because it hasn't fully developed in the wrong direction.
Okay, based on your understanding and so many times visiting China and understanding Chinese economic development, China economy has been undergoing opening up policy and development. China now is becoming a so-called newly rising economic power star. So what do you think China is going to happen?
Near term, the outlook is very good because China has emerged almost untouched by the financial crisis and is therefore in a very strong position. But longer term, the future of China depends on whether China accepts responsibility for dealing with the problems of the world. That the world, generally speaking, is in trouble. You've got global warming, you've got financial turmoil, you've got potential nuclear conflict and so on. Many, many big problems. And now China, which is emerging as a big power in the world, has to address these problems as well. China has many problems of its own, but now it has another problem. So success brings additional burdens, and that's hard to accept. But I think the future of China and the future of the world really depends on whether China accepts this responsibility or not.
Mr. Soros, based on your successful life, successful career, there are many, many also rich people in the world. So what do you think yourselves are different from other successful businessmen or investors?
Well, I think that I am actually different from most successful businessmen in this respect, that having been successful, I am actually now more concerned with the stability of the markets, with the common interest, than I am with my own. In other words, I'm no longer trying to just make money.
So you want the world to become better, more beautiful.
Yeah, that's right. And that is, one should be very suspicious about people who say that, because it's very unnatural, you see. I don't say that I am holier than thou, because as a market participant, of course I'm interested in making money. But as a citizen, as a human being, I am concerned about humanity. And it's a very big ambition, but I would like to make the world a better place. And that sets me apart from most businessmen who put their personal interest or their business interest first and the interest of the world second. I've changed that around in my old age. So that is what makes me different, and that is something very, very, I would say, unusual and also very suspicious, because most business, or many businessmen, in order to further their own interests, they tell you that they are acting for the public interest.
Okay, thank you so much.
Pleasure.